Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of Let's Talk Broncos. We're live from the Mile High Sports Studios. I'm Bree Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. We are live. You can jump in the chat right now. Come interact with us. Jump over to the YouTube. I know you're on Twitter. I know you're watching. We want you to go over to YouTube. You can search us on Mile High Sports, and we're going to retweet all the links. We're going to let you know exactly where we're at right now. There was a huge day yesterday, and we're going to get into that. A massive day. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone we're live Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And you can find all of Joey and Zach's excellent work on milehighsports.com. You can catch all of our previous episodes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. Joey, Zach, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. We were talking a little about our trip to Vegas right before this, and I just want to reflect real quick, give everyone here a pat on the back. We've came a long way from recording from the hotel floor in Vegas.
It's nice.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you,
look, we're in this little nice.
We changed the backdrop up a little. We didn't like the Wheaties boxes. We went back to the magazine covers. We're playing around with
exactly. I mean, we're doing good things. So pat on the back to you guys.
I'm very proud of exactly, where we've come from. There was a point in time where I think, we were sitting on the floor with one microphone between all of us. This is a story of true adversity and persistence. And now we've taken over the Mile High Sports Studios, where I come in and I make the studio look exactly as I want it to. And then the guys have to come in and change everything up on me. So that's just
y'all are getting real comfortable.
Bree just explained our come up story like we're Rudy or something.
Well, sometimes
or Shaquem Griffin.
Oh, damn, yeah.
Also true. I think he just retired after a pretty storied career. So.
I mean, great story.
This is actually, we're not talking about the Broncos. This is just going to be a Shaquem Griffin retirement in memoriam. When Bree said it was a big day yesterday, she wasn't talking about roster cuts. We were talking about Shaquem Griffin retiring.
This is a Seahawks spot. I don't know what you guys are doing. Next up, Drew Lock. I don't want to do it.
Pretty much.
I want to remind everyone, I said at the beginning of the show, but since we're waiting for people to pop on here, if you're watching over on Twitter, we really love and appreciate you. But we need you to hop on over to YouTube, drop a spider in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and answer your questions, refer to your comments. And like I talked about earlier, the last 48 hours have been quite chaotic and crazy for the Denver Broncos. Obviously, a lot of notable roster cuts have happened. The practice squad is being amassed. You can find that tracker on milehighsports.com. Get your full roster, see the practice squad, and then see all of the players that the Denver Broncos have chosen to move on from, some of which I think came to a shock to many of Broncos country. And we'll get to talking about a lot of those here shortly. It looks like Frankie has joined us as well. Frankie, how are you? He's given us ants. Those aren't spiders.
Ant gang represent.
Hey, let's go. Again, drop your bugs in the chat. I think bees are also acceptable.
Bees have been a running one for sure.
We almost went to Joey's question of the day, but we're not going to do that. That's Let's Talk Broncos.
Damn, I forgot my question of the day.
He's going to start coming up with a trivia question while we get into our topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
While we jump into our topics, I think first and foremost, we want to talk about the notable cuts at wide receiver. Maybe some shocks to go around there. I know the Kendall Hinton cut may have been met with a little bit of an emotional reaction by some. Brandon Johnson, again, another one that I think I tweeted out that it was a gut punch, first and foremost, because not only was he an up-and-coming member of this Denver Broncos roster, but because as a young man who's having his career trajectory completely changed, I want to talk about him as well. And then I think there was some surprises. I thought the Denver Broncos would go with 7 at wide receiver, and they ended up going with 6. So either of you, let's go Joey while Zach's over there getting the tweet out for everybody. Talk to me a little bit about some shocks, or although maybe they're not shocking, maybe you predicted these 6.
No, I was shocked. I mean, every preseason game, I thought the cuts for the receivers room would be really difficult. It felt like through the preseason, Broncos receivers were just taking turns on who was going to have the bigger day, right? Mm-hmm. And it seemed like it was going to be tough, but the Broncos really narrowed that receiver room down. So far, I mean, I didn't think that Tyree Cleveland would be such a lock, and it's clear he was a lock for it because he didn't even play in the preseason, really.
I don't know if he was.
How else would he could have made it?
I think if Brandon Johnson was healthy, things could have been different.
Ooh, I think that the way
I do think that
Stoops
injury
was talking about Tyree Cleveland about weeks ago, like he was already a lock, led me to believe that. And it's just crazy. I don't know. It's just I didn't really think that he would be that. Of course, you need special teams guys, but when you have such a loaded receiver room like the Broncos had, or I wouldn't say loaded, but at least deep receiver room like the Broncos had, it's tough to allocate just one of those spots to only special teams, and you're not really contributing anywhere else. And I don't think Tyree Cleveland was one of the better receivers on this roster. Sure, one of the better special teams players. I don't think, though, that he was one of the best receivers.
It's possible that Virgil replaced Brandon Johnson as the 6th wide receiver.
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
And I think it's one of those two, right? I will say, based on how much we saw Brandon Johnson on special teams in camp and how well he performed, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was Johnson and Virgil and not Cleveland. I do think Johnson's injury shook things up there.
I don't disagree. It's just like Stooks' comments were so bold at the time. Like I remember really taking notes of it. Like, oh my gosh, like he's really talking like he's a lock for this thing. And we haven't really seen him play. I kind of think that, I mean, if they value him on special teams that much, and I hope Tyree Cleveland is this special teams stud, right? It seems like to me they would just keep 2 good special teams players. Like, you know, if they're willing to allocate a spot only to that, why wouldn't they just have Brandon Johnson and Tyree Cleveland, I guess, if special teams is that big of a deal?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just, maybe it's just because I don't want to believe that Tyree Cleveland was always a lock, but he didn't play at all in the preseason and barely in camp. So it does kind of feel that way.
Kept him over Seth Williams and some of these other guys.
Seth Williams, to be fair, I think the coaching staff was always lower on Seth Williams than the fan base was.
Okay, that's fair. But now as I look at the receiver room, we're pretty small. Like we don't have.
It would have been different with Johnson.
I always hear your receiver room should look like a basketball team. And they say that because your point guard could be 6 foot, right? Well, your center could be 7 foot. Like, I'm not saying you should have a 7 foot receiver, but you should have all different sizes and shapes at receiver. I don't think the Broncos really have that. Now, it's not the end of the world. I think Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, and I think 5 of our receivers are really good. I'm happy we kept Jalen Virgil. I would have kept Jalen Virgil. I probably just would have went with one of those other guys, whether it be Kendall Hinton, who I think was even more of a shock than these other receivers.
I think that was the biggest shock of the room, just because you look at, even throw KJ Hamler into that mix. I think the argument's better with him out of it. Sorry, I'm going to backtrack. You look at the 3 guys at the back end of that room now: Tyree Cleveland, Jalen Virgil, Montrell Washington, a combined 6 catches in the NFL.
Yeah. It's very true. And then the guys in front of him, KJ Hamler's coming off a serious injury.
Exactly. And Hinton was proven. I don't think he's phenomenal, but I think he can eat up snaps for you and be fine and get the job done in a pinch. So I'm glad they at least retained him on the practice squad. But
no, that's a great point. Let's point that out too. The Broncos were able to get Kendall Hinton on the practice squad.
And so if they do need him in a bind, in theory, they could.
And there's special teams locks too, right? That's something that has been brought to the NFL is locks for the special team. So I hope Kendall Hinton's one of them. I'd be shocked if he wasn't, if I'm being honest with you guys.
And I would say even without the locks, and this was something a media member, I wish I could remember, it might have been Ryan Edwards. Sorry if I'm miscrediting that, but a media member pointed out to me at camp this year, because I was like, "Ooh, would you want to put them on the practice squad? Like, what if they get poached?" And they pointed out that all last season, I think something like 16, 20 players, it was a very low number, got poached across the entire league. Yeah. It's not like it was happening a ton. And of course it could happen, and you never want it to happen. But I don't think that's something to be overly worried about. Yeah. The poaching potential, that is.
Frankie chimed in here. Kendall's lack of special teams production and blocking ability really seems to hurt him as a depth option. How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's 100% true. I mean, we already touched on this, but the staff obviously is really prioritizing special teams,
and that special teams better be good. I think that
good,
point runs in hand. So I just want to throw that in there really quick. When you look at how many roster spots are like, well, they kept this guy because he's really good on special teams. That special teams better be bumping this year. I don't want to see any long returns.
I saw a comment in my thing where it's like, Tyree Cleveland better be 94 Jerry Rice on special teams. It's like, I thought it was funny, but it's kind of true. And Now, I'm not doubting. I think special teams is important. I can't sit here and proclaim all of last year how bad I want Tom McMahon out the door if I'm not valuing special teams.
There was
I can't on one hand say that and on one hand say that we shouldn't even worry about it. But I do think that I would have kept the best special teams player out of the receivers that have performed really well in the preseason. That's probably the way I would have gone.
Same. I just think you need the insurance there. I just wouldn't. I think I would have kept 7. This is a position where you lost such a key contributor, and people go, well, I think they'll go big into tight ends to replace Tim Patrick. The guy everyone was talking about in that role was Greg Dulcich, and now he's out months. Peyton said, right. Like, and he's a rookie tight end. I don't think
4 weeks.
Okay. I thought Peyton's quote said months. Maybe he was talking about over the course of his injury.
I think over the course.
Either way, he's missed months of work because he's missed time in camp. I think I really wish they would have carried the extra wide receivers, because I'm open to the argument. Okay, we'll carry more tight ends then, but the tight end room looks really shaky now. Yeah. I think that it looked like you had a lot of good young talent at wide receiver. I'm happier carrying like extra talent at a strong position than extra talent at a weak position.
So being that the Broncos did get Kendall Hinton on the practice squad, I'm not as worried.
No, agree.
I'll say that.
I don't want to hyperventilate for that reason.
I think that was a big deal.
The biggest deal was that George Payton and the Denver Broncos were able to take all of their cuts and put them specifically on the practice squad. Like, that's the best case scenario.
I mean, it's not impressive. This is the Broncos. The other teams just didn't want the Broncos guys at the end of the day. But
it feels good.
I was upset
surprised
when they
by
cut Kendall Hinton. So the fact that they were able to bring him back on practice squad, it's like, oh, maybe you know something I don't.
For real.
I think that's fair.
Wait, really quick. Before you go to the next one, I do feel like we should mention the undrafted free agents of it all, because that was the other interesting part. Jalen Virgil, just because it's a faster note, made the final 53. That's 18 of 19 years. UDFA has made the Broncos roster. I think it's always good to keep that tradition going if it makes sense to. Just for morale reasons and whatever. And Virgil, we'll have a bold prediction segment next week. I have a Jalen Virgil one that is piping hot. I'm buying into Jalen Virgil.
Is it spicy?
It's spicy.
So
I'm saving it for next week.
We're trying to move past receivers, but I also have another thing.
But on Brandon Johnson, really quick, I wanted to finish my UDFA point before you. Okay, do your point.
Was it two-parter?
Go ahead. Do your thing.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say also, I'm glad Brandon Johnson landed on the roster because, man, I was so depressed when he got off. I wanted to post him, and I was like, don't hit my line. I just found out about Brandon Johnson because I was just heartbroken over it. Glad they retained him in some shape and form, and hope he gets to contribute for this team later in the year.
Let me just talk about the Brandon Johnson point before you get to your point, so I can just fire it off here. I was tweeting about how heartbroken I was over that, and I want to say that it's okay to have feelings about the human aspect of the game as well, that you can be upset that maybe a player didn't make the roster, even if it opens the floor to other wide receivers. My goodness, please do not explain my own tweet to me in my tweet. I'm just going to throw it out there. Go ahead, Joey. Your point can now be made.
Wait, I'm allowed. Are we?
Raise your hand.
Are you guys? Are we good? I'm just kidding. I wanted to say that the Broncos last year, right, and for so many years after the KJ Hamler injury, I mean, I remember last year the Broncos were picking up the likes of John Brown and David Moore, right? That's his first name, David Moore, the receiver that they picked up.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah. And the reason they picked those guys up is for a speed element in the offense, right? It's something they severely lacked. And that's something Jalen Virgil brings, right? Like, and I'm looking at the Broncos wide receiver depth chart now. KJ Hamler, Montrell Washington, Jalen Virgil. They have 3 guys that were part of the entire training camp that fill that niche. And I don't think
I love that.
Every single team in the NFL needs a field stretcher. It opens things up, and Jalen Virgil does it. Zach's, I think you're going to write an article at some point about how he was on the freak list.
4 times. There's not many guys who are on the freaks list 4 times.
Right, and he runs 4.33. I mean, we saw it in the preseason, particularly that first preseason game where he's just running past people, and not just running past people. I remember this one play in particular where DB fell, right? So that happened, but he still beat the DB, caught the ball over his shoulder while the safety's cracking down on him down the sidelines. It's plays like that separate some of those field stretchers just from being fast and being a viable actual deep threat, you know?
Mhm.
And I hate that Virgil's just being labeled a burner, because he's not. Like, I think he is kind of vertical, more straight line wide receiver in a sense, kind of to DK. He doesn't have that change of direction ability necessarily, but he's very strong.
Yeah,
that's
big,
why
yeah.
he made the freak list.
Right.
And he was very freaky on that list. You look at the 2019 freak list, which is the year for all that awesome 2020 receiver class with Justin Jefferson and Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy. He's ranked ahead of Henry Ruggs for that year.
Dang.
Which is great. We're talking about two receivers playing the same position. The reason why he's not just a one-trick pony with speed. He's incredibly strong. He was one of the best weightlifters on the App State team. One of their best jumpers on the track team as well. So really multifaceted talent.
Nice.
And also Tyree Cleveland, a bit of a burner too. When you look at it, he's a 4.4 guy at 6'4", which I think he's not like a burner, but I think 4.4 at 6'4" is a vertical threat. He just won't see the field much on offense.
He's a interesting athlete, which is why he's such a good special teams player. I think calling him a burner means that he can beat people deep, which I have yet to see on a consistent basis, at least in the NFL.
Fair.
Hypothetically, with his athletic traits, he should be able to.
Yes, I guess he is good deep speed, vertical speed.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move on to the next one, I just want to give a shout out to McKenna. She said she liked my headphones. Thanks, McKenna.
Wait, Bree, really?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I was like, what did I do now? Oh, okay. Call back. Let's move on over. I think we're going to talk about DTY and JR Reed. I'm trying to click over to the.
Yeah, really quick. Before we get into it, and I know I'm just doing the thing I was making fun of. Can anyone understand this comment?
Quoting yourself from Twitter causes a strange ripe breath. I think I quoted myself from Twitter.
Did you cause a strange right breath?
I don't know what that means, but if
When
you
you're
can smell me
saying-
through the microphone, there's bigger issues at hand.
Interesting take there.
Thanks, DC. Appreciate your comment.
Shout out DC. Thank you.
Let's talk about DTY and JR Reed.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm going to throw it to you first, I think, on this one.
Yeah, I think this was a surprise for me just because of what we saw from DTY throughout so much of camp. You've had an awesome last preseason game. Finally saw some of the things you were so excited about. I wonder how big of a factor that played. If they saw the improvement in the second preseason game, especially relative to the first, some improvement over the final weeks of camp, which I think definitely was there. And then not that he was outperforming JR Reed, but that he was improving and had an upward trajectory. Then he had that great preseason game to cap things off. I will say, I think there was a good chance of him making the roster before that last preseason game, because when I did my hot seat article ranking, how likely I thought certain Broncos were to make the roster, I reached out to some people and I was like, hey, does anything here jump out to you as odd or noteworthy? And a note I consistently got back was, I think you have JR Reed too safe.
Wow.
And so at the time I was like, nah, I don't think so. I don't believe in Delaire and Turner Yell, but he had that great game and here we are. And so I think it does make sense somewhat, though. I personally would have preferred they roll with JR Reed.
Yeah, it's I'm wondering if it came down to this. I think that the Broncos have such a good four at the beginning, right? Justin Simmons,
Yep.
Caden Stearns, Kareem Jackson,
I
PJ
love that
Locke,
point.
that for the last one, it kind of just went with, we were going to take the younger player.
And then when you have four, like JR Reed's on a 1-year camp body contract. Like
right.
before training camp started, I predicted he would be
So
cut because of the contract.
Can I ask you guys a question real quick?
So it makes sense. Sorry, just to roll with DTY to your point, because he's a project.
Right.
Go with your question.
Would you rather have kept 4 safeties or 7 wide receivers, or 5 safeties or 7 wide receivers? Could you have cut DTY and picked up another receiver? Would that have made you happier?
No, because I thought that not necessarily, because I thought the defensive backs would go 6 and 5. And so I thought 11 total was where, but if it meant picking up and saving another wide receiver, perhaps.
Isn't the reasoning probably special teams?
That's what I was thinking. I'm thinking that the reason that's a big reason there.
Charted up as another roster spot for special teams.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, DTY, to be fair,
It was that big of a problem last season, though.
it was big, but like
I didn't mean to cut you
we've
off.
like they were making accusations or acquisitions. Goodness, They're making acquisitions last season that were special teams based. That's a good number of players on the roster, and you had the coaching staff change. I think a lot of people were hoping that the coaching staff changed from Tom McMahon paired with like kind of dedicating a draft to depth guys. And like, I think a lot of people were hoping that would take care of special teams. And it's like, it feels like a hat on a hat on a hat at this point. And it's like, man, I get it was a big problem. So pouring this much into it, it better be good next year. Sorry, Joey.
You're good. And hypothetically, DTY should be a good special teams player, right? I mean, we saw it even with his defensive play last game, where he's completely the play style he is run and hit. Mm-hmm. That's what he is. He's a run and hit player. So I think he should be good on that. I think J.R. Reed would be a good special teams player as well. But you take the younger player there.
Yeah, I think that's what we've been talking about on Let's Talk Broncos for a couple of weeks, is that maybe if it didn't make sense, but you kind of have to with that draft position. Let's move on over. We'll talk about McTelvin Najim, who I think maybe we saw this one coming. Joey, you want to take this?
Yeah, I totally saw this one coming. If you guys have followed the podcast at all, this has been one that I've been harping on, and it sucks because I wanted Najim to work out so bad. I heard such good things.
We were harping on him positively before we started harping on him negatively.
Totally. I remember when he came out, I didn't think he was going to go as high as he did. And I think majority of people that follow the draft closely didn't think he was going to go. He was a 4th round pick, right? Mm-hmm. 4th round pick. I didn't think many people thought he would be a 4th round pick. I think more than not, people thought he would be a 5th or 6th rounder. But the Broncos took him 4th round. And the reason why you heard was because, hey, he has these athletic traits. We're going to develop them, and we're going to bet on the person. We like his personality. We like his work ethic, different things like that. I thought it was an okay risk. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. The guy never came around in the run game. That was mostly what happened. He got pushed around entirely too easy. So I'm not really shocked by it. I think that you had to go with the 2 rooks there. If they're all kind of in that same area of how they performed this offseason, you obviously take the rookies, the guys that are fresh in to your building. And I think that's what the Broncos did there.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think when you look at McTelvin Najim, I was kind of surprised no one added the only element. What's going on? Okay, let's I'll respond after we look at some comments.
No.
Oh, Frankie.
I was looking at
Dan Campbell is in the chat. Frankie, that is excellent. Oh my God, it is Dan Campbell and it's DC. Guys, Dan Campbell, a fan of Let's Talk Broncos.
Let's go.
Shout out Coach Campbell. Good joke, Frankie. But on McTelvin Najim, I just think the only part of it that surprised me, because yes, the snaps were very inconsistent despite the splash plays that were so exciting and were so awesome, which has kind of been the McTelvin Najim story through his first 3 years in the league. I was surprised no one else took a shot on him. He was a 3rd round pick that was a very popular like draft period riser, like those final 2 weeks before the draft when we see some guys fly up boards.
Totally was.
He was one of them. And so he was a guy multiple people around the league had a crush on.
Yeah.
And then yes, the development wasn't quite there, but the flashes absolutely were. And there are a lot of scouts that I think grade the flashes. So I am surprised that no one else gave him a look on waivers.
That's probably telling.
It is telling, but he's on the practice squad. Hopefully, man, if it can finally click for McTelvin Najim, it'll be really, really exciting. And maybe it happens on the practice squad. I wouldn't hold my breath, but
was it only
he's
flashes?
in the building. It's possible.
Was it only flashes during the last preseason game?
No, I think there were flashes last year. He just barely got on the field.
The flashes were far and like they just weren't really. I saw them, but they weren't very like. It wasn't consistent flashes where it's like something I want to put my chips on the table for.
No, and I would bet against it. I'm just saying, I think you see the high level play there. Like the only players ahead of him in pass rush win rate last year on the interior defensive line are Aaron Donald, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, and another one of the elite ones whose name I'm blanking now. It's not DeForest Buckner, but it's another name like that. Yeah. Where I don't know. I think there's something there. I don't think he ever realizes that potential, but at least he's still in the building. That's nice.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Want to move over to kind of another Broncos player we had some questions surrounding for this preseason, and it worked itself out in a pretty strange way. Zach, let's talk about Michael Ojemudia and tell me what you're seeing there. How do you feel about the not cut?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with it just because the Broncos have nothing else and he's not taking up a roster spot. He's on short-term IR. They kind of kicked the problem down the road 4 weeks, 6 weeks, however long they need him on there. And when you're ready to bring him back, you can go, hey, I'm assuming they add another boundary corner because, as I'm sure Joey's about to mention, they only have 3 on the roster right now, and one of them's a day 3 rookie. It's not good. They are down bad. So yeah, I don't mind it for those reasons. It's like you don't have a better option right now. But and again, he's not taking up a roster spot. Uh but yeah, hopefully when he's back to 100%, we get a better version of Michael Ojemudia.
Yeah, he's interesting because we've seen like high flashes. I think he's like a better example of kind of what we were talking about at Gene. We've seen high flashes of Michael Jamudia, and he has the traits that you like in a corner. He's big, he's tall, he's fast. He has a lot of the stuff coming that you like. Now he's another player along with the Gene where the Broncos took him way above where I think the media's expectation of him were to go, and he even started as a rookie, right? Like that's like crazy.
And all things considered, for a 3rd round rookie outside corner, played well.
Yeah.
If Damari Mathis turned in Michael Ojemudia's rookie season,
yes,
you'd be
higher.
I'd be fine with it. You know what I mean? Like that'd
Yeah.
be if Damari Mathis was thrown into the flames week 1, as we saw with Michael Ojemudia, and he turned in that level of rookie season, I'd be pleasantly surprised with that production from a 4th round corner.
Right. And yeah, exactly that. Like and so he's shown those flashes as Zach was just mentioning. It's just, man, did he struggle this preseason and off season. When I was reading Zach's threads, it always felt like, oh, so and so beat Ojemudia. And
he had one awesome interception. Otherwise, it was a lot of burnt toast.
Yeah, and then I watch it in the preseason, and it's not much better. I'm seeing him get picked on consistently. So I wouldn't have been mad if the Broncos cut him, but they just don't have a better option. They really don't have a better option right now. They have to keep him around.
Do you still think they go outside of the current?
Totally.
No,
and I think they should.
I think they have to.
They have to. 3 boundary corners isn't going to cut it. I just
Are you
don't
calling
think
on Faion Hicks later? And can he fill that role?
They may have.
They never ran him. I thought he would be a boundary guy coming out of Wisconsin. So I think he had the ability. The fact they never ran him there at camp makes me think it's not going to be Faion. And then the last thing I wanted to shoot, I lost it.
And it's gone. That was my fault.
No, you're fine. It wasn't that important.
Obviously. I blame Tom Brady for ruining OJ's career.
Yeah, did shake his confidence. Okay, actually, thank you, Frankie. That totally brought it back to me. To Joey's point about him getting picked on, like it was worse than that. You had preseason offenses game planning. It felt like, let's throw it at OJ every single play. It was painful.
Not even in a baiting way, just knowing that's going to be the slow drag point there on the field. Out in the secondary. That's frustrating. I guess I just didn't see where that was happening last season.
I mean, he played that one game last year, and it was a really good game. But it's a great example of why you don't bet on a one game performance. And
corner's a high variance position.
Yeah, and why just off of a preseason performance or so on, you don't want to make this broad stroke of faith off of one little sample size. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, talking about small sample sizes, let's jump into a no sample size and Greg Dulcich. And before you guys get started, I'm just going to plant my flag right here and say I'm going to be stubbornly placed in I hope in 4 weeks, he's ready to go and that he's able to establish something and produce here with this offense, because I think that's what you're anticipating, for him to come in strong enough to play that role at a high level. But it's like I am putting all the chips against actually what is even favorable to happen. So Zach, tell me why I'm wrong.
I think you look at rookie tight end production and it's a really dark history kind of across the board. Outside of like the Kyle Pitts and the Mike Ditkas, which are the extreme outliers. Like you look at Noah Fant's rookie year where he had like I think it was either somewhere like 2 to 4 touchdowns and like 400 yards and 40 receptions. And that compares favorably to like Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Zach Ertz and like a lot of the best tight ends of the past decade, just because that's what it looks like at the position. And now you're taking almost all of his offseason reps away from him. You're giving him a nagging injury like a hamstring for this year. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be ready for the role the Broncos envisioned him in, which I think was going to be kind of this big slot role. And I think especially following Tim Patrick's injury, they were expecting him to step into that and take a lot of snaps there. It's possible it happens, and it's possible. Well, I think it's going to happen at some point this season, and it's possible he's really good at it. But I just think, like Joey talked about with Baron Browning on this show, however many months ago, when Baron Browning was ready to enter the starting lineup, like, hey, everyone, temper your expectations. This guy had no offseason reps, was fairly raw coming out of college, like lower your expectations. And he was awesome. This would be a similar case where hopefully Dulcich is awesome, but I would lower your expectations and just, he's at a position that's really hard to make the transition to the NFL to. He's already like kind of undersized. And he missed all his offseason work. I'm just worried.
Yeah. Through our interviews when we've interviewed players this time, a question I always liked asking the players was like, did you have a welcome to the NFL moment? And every single one of them, the way they explained it was like, my eyes were wide open when I saw Von Miller lined up against me in Calvin Anderson's time.
Yeah.
The list goes on through all the players we interviewed. And that's something Dulcich is going to do live in a regular season football games at some point this year. To Zach's point, at a position that usually takes years to develop, because what's lost in it is you're learning two skill sets. You're learning not just how to catch the ball, how to run routes, everything that comes with that, but you're also learning lineman traits, how you block, hand placement, different things like that. The tight end position is one of the toughest to get really a hold of. You're usually going to struggle in one of the aspects. And you're really you're going to be asked to do multiple things, and you're probably going to struggle in one or both.
That's why I really hope they simplify it for him.
Yeah. Can we preface Broncos country though with a little bit of this position? Again, takes a little time to.
Totally. And I think that's totally fair. Noah Fant this year could be his breakout year.
Exactly.
That's how that position works.
Yes.
And I think, again, this goes for all tight ends. It's amplified with Greg Dulcich because we're talking about a mid-round tight end and a guy who's missed all of the offseason work to prepare him for this.
Right.
I'd say if you want to go half glass full with Dulcich, there's a world where the Broncos really limit what they're asking him to do. I think when you watch his tape at UCLA, I think he has a natural feel for route running and finding the soft spots in the defense and finding angles after the catch and whatnot. Where maybe if you just really simplify it for him and just be like, hey, be a power slot for us every now and then on early downs, on first or second down. That I could see him succeeding in, but I think you really have to simplify and minimize what you're asking him to do, because to Joey's point, tight end is a position where you're asked to do so many things and it's hard to learn all those things. He's had no time to learn all those things. Ask him to do a lot less if you want him to be productive as a rookie.
My half glass full take, and it's not even half glass full, it's just realistic. You draft players for long-term investment. If Dulcich doesn't produce this 1 year because of an injury, it's not the end of the world, because we have him on a 4-year contract. And they didn't take him for his rookie year. They took him for his contract.
That is the position I'm taking with the upside and optimism of I hope that he actually produces this year. Frankie hopped in the chat with it's Noah Fant and Drew Lock's breakout year.
If they can get a fair shot.
Christ almighty. I'm muting the word Drew Lock.
You're gonna ban Drew Lock from the Mile High Sports YouTube.
Yeah, I actually am gonna go into the settings later today and just make sure that I never have to see that slander again. Fantastic.
You know what time it is? It's everyone's favorite time.
What time is it?
Joey's question of the day.
We've made it, folks. You've made it to the end of the episode. Joey's got a trivia question for us.
Brought to you by Monsanto.
I thought we were sponsored by Nestle.
I'm just going with different evil corporations.
Nestle is pretty evil. Hashtag not sponsored. Unless you pay us. I don't know.
We'll sell our souls.
I will. I don't have one. Joey, what's your question of the day?
Okay, I just found it right now. So the NFL has had 14 instances, right? I'm reading this word for word from an article. The NFL has had 14 instances of a player having 4 interceptions in one game, accomplished by 13 different players, right? 3 of those 13 guys have had 3 of those 14. Wow, this is crazy. 3 of those 13 guys have had 4 interceptions in one game while wearing a Broncos jersey.
3?
3. That's actually a crazy thing.
I know at least one of them.
I have 2. Go.
What's that
Trying to
look? Are you
read
trying
your
to
mind.
erase me?
Yeah. Oh.
Dre Bly. No, my guess is do we have to name one or all 3? What's your question, Joey?
Yeah, what is the question?
Oh, just do one.
Okay. Deltha O'Neal.
Bam. Okay, you get the other one.
I knew it was the thing because in Madden 07, when you went to the record section, which was my first Madden, he had the record for most interceptions in the game. Like he was the first one listed among all those players, tied with 4.
I don't know this other guy. I know the one of them.
Come on.
Is it a well-known name?
Yeah,
Is it a Hall of Famer?
he's really good.
Drop your guesses in the chat. Quick, don't Google it. We already know Deltha O'Neal's one of them. Guess who the final 2 are.
Oh, I wonder how you knew.
One played
One.
one played for both the Broncos and
From my
AFC.
Madden past. I wasn't doing research.
One played for the Broncos and another AFC West rival. It's really old, but
Oh, really old?
he's really, really good.
Played for an AFC West rival.
He's really, really good. He's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, that's not the guy I was thinking of.
Do you want me to say
He
it?
said
Nandi Asama.
No, he played for the Broncos.
I know, but you said I thought you said he also played for a division rival. I thought Namdi
He didn't play
had
for
a
the
stop
Broncos.
with the okay. Maybe
was the division rival the Raiders?
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna just say
yeah,
it.
Just
you
say
got to
it.
tell us.
Willie Brown.
Oh yeah, Willie Brown.
Willie
I
Brown.
never would have gotten there.
Yeah, that was
so
a good
he's
one.
another one. And then this other guy's name is Goose.
Oh yeah, Goose
Goose
Gossett.
Gossett.
Or
Yeah.
No,
Goose
the other
Gossett?
one.
No, Goose. Yeah.
Yeah, Goose.
He was in the Jim Sakamano book I read when I was 12. Don't know anything else.
Asamaga.
Yeah, Asamoah.
Esma.
But he was not on the Broncos. I was misremembering. I thought he had like a Pac-Man Jones thing. Where
What
he
year
had,
was he active in the NFL?
I closed out of it. We'll never know.
We'll never know, and neither will you. Thanks for tuning into a fantastic and fun episode live brought to you by Mile High Sports from the Mile High Sports Studios. Thanks for your interaction in the chat. Appreciate all the comments, likes, shares. Please make sure that you're subscribing to wherever you're catching your Let's Talk Broncos podcasts, shows, information. You get to see us every single day, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Joey, Zach, where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, everybody go to my Twitter, JR Drafts, and then find my writing at Mile High Sports. Zach,
Yeah.
what about you, man?
Writing over at milehighsports.com, tweets over at Zach_Seegers. That's really it for me. Please like the show, give us 5 stars,
Share
subscribe.
the broadcast if you laughed at all.
Yeah, if you're watching this on Facebook, like the little or on YouTube, just like scrolling down and touching that like button. It takes like 2-3 seconds, and it's wildly helpful to us. It's stupid, but it's so helpful.
If
Please
I don't
do it.
get at least 10 likes on this YouTube broadcast, I'm not coming back next
She's
week.
gonna stab me.
I will stab Zach. There is a knife taped to the bottom of this table, and like Jigsaw, I would like to play a game. You can find me over on Brie Maestas 303 on the Twitter. You can follow me if you so feel obliged, but I'd really like you to follow at the LTB podcast. You can find me Monday through Friday here with the guys. You can also find me on the Fan Cave Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays are my show where we get a little weird, 1 to 2 p.m. on Mile High Sports Radio. And again, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. You make it all worth it. We'll see you again tomorrow. Let's go Broncos and let's ride.
Let's ride.